Hey guys, I just wanted to give a visual rundown of all the games that I finished one way or another in the year 2020. My goal for the year was to beat 20 games, whatever that may have looked like for the type of game. I made my own rules, which I will explain now. If it was an RPG, finishing the main story with getting the credits to roll. If it was a more open game, maybe something like beating all the stages once on normal or something like that. Replayable games I didn't count, in games like MMOs or games without a clear end were not counted here either. I'll break down all the personal requirements for each game in the video, as well as give you the playtime and maybe some thoughts about the game. So starting off the list in January, I completed Shadows Awakening. I beat it at around 26 hours with the character Callie, the Barbarian. There are other characters in the game, but I decided that since the core story wouldn't change much depending on the character I chose, one playthrough would be good enough for me. I had started and intended to beat this game in December the previous year, but didn't get back to it until mid-January, and I ended up beating it then. It was a fun game. I'm always down for some good grinding sessions when it's this kind of game, and something about this genre really vibes with me. The only complaint I have is with my system. On PC, the load times were really long, and I found that in window mode, if I clicked away from the game while it was loading, the window wouldn't respond while loading, and then it would finally load in. I don't know what was happening there, but otherwise some tiny frame drops weren't enough to keep me from beating this one. I was craving more of this type of game, so I beat Grim Dawn in February. This one took me about 29 hours to beat, and I didn't have the DLC, so I just beat the main storyline. Where I felt Shadows Awakening had some brighter areas, this game was a much more muted aesthetic, as you can see in this clip. I don't have much to say about the game other than I enjoyed it, and there was a potential for a lot of min-maxing builds, but I don't usually think about that, so I just grabbed whatever boosted my favorite skills. I didn't get the chance to play with anyone in multiplayer, but it's nice to know that it's there if I ever want to pick it up again and play with a friend. Next up, we have Oh Daddy. I mean, Dream Daddy. The visual novel, made by the Game Grumps. Coming in at 5 hours and 37 minutes, I beat all of the storylines. Now, with visual novels like this, I usually only pay attention to the storylines of the characters I'm actually interested in, so if this time seems quick for a visual novel, it's because I skipped a lot of the dialogue with the characters I wasn't really interested in. Sue me, I get impatient. For a visual novel, it was pretty enjoyable. The dads were really cute, and my character was also pretty cute. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of enjoyed all of the dad jokes that they made. Now, we're just gonna skip right over March, and in April, I ended up beating Nier Automata. Finally. I have a total playtime of 40 hours and 38 minutes. I saw endings A to E and unlocked 15 endings in total. Since multiple playthroughs are mostly required to get the full story, I decided that doing the main character endings and getting to the actual credits was how I was going to complete this game. And I agree with most of the internet, the soundtrack is pretty amazing, and the visuals were pretty nice. I think I got lost a few times, which contributed to my inflated time, but it wasn't that big of a deal. Also, the eyes. Then May hit, and so did Final Fantasy VII Remake. I went hard on this game, beating it in just 2 weeks within its release, which I don't do a lot anymore. I have a total of 39 hours and 40 minutes in the game with one playthrough on normal, with most of the side quests done. I don't think I have much to say about this game other than I really enjoyed streaming it, which you can see the full playthrough on this channel, and that through all the tears and laughs, it was a solid game. But of course it was. This is Square Enix we're talking about after all. If I were to have one complaint, it's that I want the next installment now, and that the pacing was a little weird here and there. Once again, Square Enix showed off their storytelling ability and their graphical prowess with this one. Also in May was the story mode for Streets of Rage 4, which I played with Erica, known around YouTube as Erica's for the win. I joined in on Erica's stream and we beat the entire game in about 3 hours with only a few restarts on the bosses and about 5 tries on the final boss. If I'm remembering correctly, we played on normal and didn't really explore any of the other modes after that. It was a great game, and they really nailed the feeling of Streets of Rage and the whole couch co-op beat-em-up genre. The art direction and music were also amazing. It's a great homage to the original games. I popped off a little in June, I have to say. I started off with Eternal Senya at 5 hours and 16 minutes. It's an action-style game made with what looks like some version of the RPG Maker. This game isn't too long to get through and took me a couple of nights. It's a nice little game and the system is easy enough to understand. You just run into enemies to attack them. There's a little bit of a potential grind here and there, which of course I took advantage of, and it's a great de-stressing game. I didn't really bother to pay much attention to the story, but basically... Onesa! While looking through my sparse GOG account, I remembered that I had Teen Agent. It's a narrative point-and-click game about a kid that gets chosen to become a spy? I beat it in one night with a walkthrough in 2 hours and 16 minutes. Don't ask me to tell you all the stuff that happens in this game. I'll be honest, this was kind of a wash of a game since my goal was to see what it was about and beat it. And I accomplished that. I beat LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga in 10 hours and 17 minutes. With the invincible cheat and the 10 times bit cheats on. I wanted to experience the story itself and with the path of least resistance. Of course, this was one of my more chill games, and if you don't think I should count this game because of the cheats I used, then I guess we have different ways of playing games. I finished up the entire story of the new Sakura Wars game and beat it on stream. My total time was 23 hours and 38 minutes for one main story playthrough. This was my first Sakura Wars game ever, and it just made me want to see what the older ones were like. It's part visual novel with spending time with the girls and their respective story chapters, and part action game with the mech section. I wasn't too impressed with the action combat. It felt kind of like a half-baked Muso game at times, but it was enough to separate the chapters and the talking segments, so I just got used to them eventually. I spent a little bit more time getting all the endings after finishing up the first playthrough on stream, but I'm going to only count the first playthrough time since I didn't actually platinum the game in the end. I picked up Diggerman on Steam somewhere along the way. I beat all the levels with a total of 3 hours and 24 minutes. There are many more upgrades and things I could get in the game, but I eventually just pushed through to the end, or rather, the bottom. In July, I beat all of Muse-Dash's current songs. I beat a lot of songs on hard, sometimes resorting to normal difficulty if things got too hard, but overall beat the game with a time of 11 hours and 24 minutes. Now because this is a rhythm game, I didn't really set a parameter for beating this. My requirement was to beat all of the current patch songs at least once on any difficulty that was comfortable for me. There was another patch after this and I went back to beat all of those songs as well, but this is just my initial time from the patch that was current at the time. It was well over 100 songs, so if you're looking for a buff rhythm game, Muse-Dash is easy to get into and it's still updating with songs. I also finally put in Atelier Firis, The Alchemist, and the Mysterious Journey into my PS4 and I beat it on stream with a total time of 17 hours and 10 minutes. You may be wondering why this is such a short time for an RPG with so much content to offer. Well, I don't know if you can tell from a lot of these times, but I was trying to go fast through these games. And because I could get an ending from going a certain route in this game, I took it and ended up with the subpar ending and credits. It wasn't ideal, and I could have spent much more time in this game without a penalty, but if I want a better playthrough, I'll have to go through with a walkthrough someday. On to August, where I bought a more risque game. Wish Beyond Fate on Steam is a match 3 game with monster girls, and it was under $10. It wasn't a terribly long game, only taking me 3 hours and 34 minutes to get through all of the girls' main stories. I installed the nudity pack, so that made things a little bit more, shall we say, interesting. Anyways, moving on. Another rhythm game, Neon Drive. This game had my name all over it, but I wasn't expecting it to be so difficult. I got stuck on a few stages because the movements have to be pretty precise, and I can't imagine completing all the stages on every difficulty. In 1 hour and 42 minutes, I beat all the stages only on normal mode. It was a lot, but a good challenge to anybody who wants to try. I finally got around to playing RE-MIXSHIDEN. I absolutely love these types of games, and without looking too hard at a walkthrough for hints, I clocked in at 5 hours and 12 minutes. I cried at the end. I couldn't help it. It was such a beautiful ending. The game is not very well optimized even for my potato PC, but I have a high tolerance for that kind of thing, so it didn't bug me that much throughout the game. The areas were beautiful, and once I actually figured out what the journey and areas represented, I had a whole other appreciation for the game. The last game I beat in August was Persona 4 Golden. I rode one playthrough to the end with a walkthrough to get the true ending of the game. It took me 54 hours and 56 minutes, and now I can finally say I've beaten it. I didn't get around to full completion with the ultimate personas, the books, or the special dish, but seeing the true end was a treat enough for me. Just when I thought this game was over, there was still so much more to do. It was a true RPG experience. I started off September with Dust, an Elysian Tale. This one was short, coming in at only 6 hours and 34 minutes. I think it took me about 3 or so sessions to beat this one. I don't usually play these kinds of games, but this one seemed like it was on the easier side of the spectrum. I blasted through the story of this once again, but the main quest as well as the side quests were well written for what I was reading. Thankfully, I didn't have to look up a lot for this game, and yes, even I play games blind sometimes. Batman: The Telltale Series. Yeah, not much to say here. Took a nice even 4 hours and 44 minutes to get through it. I thought I was going to let the game play out and just let Bruce be silent the whole time, but by the end of the first chapter, I was invested in the story and wanted everything to work out for him, so I actually actively played through this one. And last on our list of 20 games is Killer is Dead. I played through it on easy with a total time of 4 hours and 50 minutes, with only a few side quests explored and no cutscenes skipped. And I have to say, I enjoyed this wacky-ass game. The story was so out there and the combat felt nice. Everything I need in an action game. And that's it. My 20 games I beat in 2020. Looking through my stats on how long to beat, where I logged all my times, my total average time to beat a game was 15 hours. The grand total of all of these games was exactly 300 hours, or 12 days and 12 hours. But I didn't stop there. In October, I ended up beating Suikoden 1 for the first time on stream. I also beat Picross 3D Round 2 in my free time. I also played Dragon Quest XI on stream, getting the end of the regular story. Hey, if you're watching to the end of this, thank you so much. I don't usually do videos like this, and I actually spent time and wrote out a whole script for this, which is very weird. But don't get used to this. The whole reason behind this was I felt like I wasn't getting through a lot of my backlog, and I thought I would set a goal for myself to beat a number of games by the end of the year, which worked out because I actually got to beat all these games, but maybe not in the way that I was thinking. I definitely sped through a lot of these games, and I don't know if I really recommend this to everybody, but it's a good way to get through that big Steam list. Anyways, thanks again for watching this video, and if you did enjoy it, send a like, leave a comment, all that YouTube stuff. Let me know if you did enjoy this kind of content from me, and I will try to take that into consideration for the future. Oh, and I platinumed Assassin's Creed Odyssey.